I think Google nowadays is a lot more prone into fluff because they do look like an e-commerce platform. And nowadays, I think that e-commerce platforms are the king because this is what Google understands.
What do you think is the most important off-site ranking factor?
From studies, we have seen a lot of variability in terms of like what a positive thing means, and obviously this changed from industry to industry. I think something that is quite understood is it's not necessarily dependent that if you go to an iGaming site, you spend like 10 minutes actually going to be a good thing. It might be still be treated as an outlier. During the peak hours, if you have your customers driving to your store, having a positive experience, spending time at the physical location, and then leaving a review, this user path is very, very important for the up and coming rankings of the business itself. And actually, I have like GSE data to prove that. It is a specific score that goes lower once a page has multiple prices, multiple CTAs, and in a sense confuses the user. So there's a lot of things that we have learned out of this Cupid leak that explain how we should structure our pages. Best way to kind of counteract for that is to compress your content and create a more rich content vector, which means
Breaking news.
Odys is selling 86% of their inventory to over 40,000 verified buyers, and most of it are instant sales. Are you sitting on a premium H domain? Sign up for Odys Marketplace right now and wait for your check.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Odys Podcast. My name is Aneta Samkov, and you won't believe, but today we're recording at 11:30 p.m. at Kuşadası in Turkey at the Holistic SEO Mastermind, and my guest is Lefteris Soulas. Thank you so much, Leo, for staying so late.
it's been a cycle, but I'm glad that we made it a week here.
Yes, finally. We're leaving tomorrow at 4 a.m., but we're gonna pull through.
Exactly.
So I'm super excited because Leo is a data scientist and the owner of Keyword Cupid. And you're
Yeah.
exactly. You have a bunch of businesses. You know the industry very well. So actually, can you start by telling us how has your background in data science influenced your view of SEO?
Yeah. So I have worked in several companies in Fortune 500 companies in the US, and going through the internal processes, understanding how you are presenting a thesis to project managers, how you structure a Jira ticket or a wiki page, or how you are thinking about presenting something to your colleagues, makes you understand a little bit more of like the processes or the conversations that a big company like Google or Facebook or other corporations that you want to kind of understand how they work would approach certain problems in terms of scalability, in terms of cost effectiveness, in terms of what solutions would the engineers pick in order to be able to make those solutions viable. And some solutions, although this is important because it kind of narrows down the test that you want to run, because literally some solutions that you might think that it could be viable, it could be financially impossible to scale.
Okay.
So, and it is still companies that they have to minimize the expenses while maximizing their ROI. Yeah.
So what do you think is the most important off-site ranking factor?
Yeah. If you asked me a few years ago, I would probably, would go with backlinks or like strong off-site profile. Nowadays, and especially post ATU, I would veer towards user signals. I'm a believer for many years right now that user engagement, the crowdsourcing part, it was the one that was much better voting kind of like mechanism than backlinks, which was again in a past kind of past life, I would say we were trying to do the majority voting based on backlinks because that's the best that we could do in terms of computation. But now that the models and on all the infrastructure have scaled, you're able to understand a lot more about user signals. Google is able to understand a lot more about how to blend all of those things together, create histograms, create predictive models, understand user path history. So I would say that user engagement to the site, to the offsites, to Google itself is the most important factor that we can pay attention to right now.
Okay, so can you give us examples of positive user signals?
Yeah. Yeah, from studies, we have seen a lot of variability in terms of like what a positive thing means, and obviously this changed from industry to industry. I think something that is quite understood is the click-through rate from Google itself. So someone searching the query that you're looking for and then clicking on your result and going to your website and then performing a full user journey. Full user journey depends on the industry itself. For some, for iGaming, for example, it might be a very short query, very short time span. It might just be only a few minutes because of the nature of the game. For other sites like travel blogs, it might be 5 minutes. So it's not necessarily dependent that if you go to an iGaming site, you spend like 10 minutes, actually going to be a good thing. It might be still be treated as an outlier. Something else that how we have seen from Google My Business and kind of like more local businesses that we're working with is that the driving directions, the ability of a business to attract its customers to their location is very important as well. Somebody that, like for example, during the peak hours, if you have your customers driving to your store, having a positive experience, spending time the at the physical location, and then leaving a review, this query journey, this user path is very very important for the up and coming rankings of the business itself.
So on the flip side, have
Yeah.
you seen any user behavior that can actually hurt a website?
Yes, in fact, like we have seen both from tests that were kind of artificial and also from tests that were like based on a site that was actually not properly structured, people clicking in and out. And we were able to track this from from the logs of the server, where we could see people clicking in and then automatically we weren't seeing any other sessions or anything else, any other journey in the site itself. So somebody going to Google and searching on the main keyword, clicking on your brand and clicking out of that sends a very strong. Or something else that I have seen anecdotally from different tests that I have done in different groups is that someone clicking on your brand and then automatically exiting the browser, kind of like stopping the user journey there. This is a very strong kind of signal to search engines and to aggregators that they didn't get satisfied with the result, and especially if they exit the browser, actually stop the whole journey, which stop the actual monetization journey through advertising, which is a very bad thing for advertising agencies and publishers.
So it's not just coming back to the search; it's also
So
actually
yeah, and actually I have like GSE data to prove that, where it was as apparent as the keywords, the main view of the brand, going from position 1, because that is obviously the brand name, to page 11.
Wow.
So it was a very drastic thing that there's something wrong about this. Either the user was not satisfied or the site wasn't operable. There was a very, very interesting thing that was apparent there.
So what is the difference between virality and CTR?
Yeah. So virality, the way that I define it at least, is more of like, I would say white hat / gray hat methodology. It's not something that, it's manipulated. It's about actually creating a viral trend, exploiting in a sense the instant now boost algorithm. If you go back by the Google Leak documentation, where it's the emerging events. For example, if there's an earthquake, there's a war, there's something that's happening that's emerging, and the search engines have to adapt real quickly to be able to show to the user that something is happening, to reward that source of information with other related queries because they might be relevant to people. So this happens through different means, through social media, through email campaigns, through mobile apps. So if we are syndicating with a lot of mobile apps that we want to be able to kind of pass that URL and show it to the users, and then this creates this artificial or actual engagement, because many people will see it, will interact with it, and just kind of this goes back into Google and search engines. CTR manipulation is something a little bit different, which is the first thing that I talked about, artificially clicking on something, or not even artificially, but like searching a query and then clicking on one of the results and then spending time there. This click-through rate actually goes to the site and communicates engagement, positive engagement, satisfaction from the user, and is a very strong positive signal, both for the site itself and also when you're doing it with backlinks. So what we have seen as well is that if you have a set of backlinks that are pointing to your site, and boosting those sites actually boosts the relevant domain that like they're all connected to. So it's more of like a chain reaction, I would say.
So for difficult niches like iGaming, for example, how would you reinforce the good user signals?
Yeah. So this is something that ties very much into the HCU, post HCU era. I would, and I that's what I do for the sites that I'm involved in, is that I'm trying to think of the user and I'm trying to think of how I'm going to keep the user in the site. For example, like if we're talking about an iGaming site, a casino site, would you be able to put an actual game on the site itself, an actual slot game, something that can keep the person in the page? And if you can do that, would you be able to have the user click in your site and do a certain user path action instead of just going in, getting a bonus code, getting an information, a small piece of information that they want, and exiting out? This is a very important bit of information because there's sites like Cupid.com, which I have been following for a while, and I really like how they have structured it because they do look like an e-commerce platform. And nowadays, I think that e-commerce platforms are the king because this is what Google understands. This is what Google knows how to place comparing to affiliate or lead generation sites, which are massive sites that have a lot of content that doesn't know exactly how to place to have value for the user, or are they there to just monetize as a middleman? Whereas e-commerce sites, they know exactly what it is. There's monetization behind them, monetization for the platform, and value for the end user that buys the items. So I would say for a game specifically, users should start thinking of how they can put a product or maybe an extra element in their work, in the user flows. For example, instead of showing the bonuses for the casino they're affiliated with, they can just add them as a part. That action, and I can say this from experience because I have several lead generation sites where I have added this kind of functionality. It's not like I'm selling things. It's a lead generation thing, but I do have an e-commerce element that ends up like literally you can add parts in the cart. You can just go and pay. Obviously, I'm not taking payments because I don't have inventory, but because the users cannot pay, they go to the contact page and they send me an email. When this user sequence happens, at least 5 to 10 times in a specific hour, I see the ranking skyrocket for the next few days.
Oh, wow.
Because Google is seeing people doing things. You cannot understand exactly what they're doing, but they're not just clicking in and out. They're just doing things on the site.
Great. So let's move to content, to talk about content. From your data work, what is like one big shift that you have seen since the Google leaks in terms of how Google is now judging the content?
Yeah. I think Google nowadays is a lot more prone into fluff. Because of the advent of AI and all of the mass content that has been produced, is the massive amount of content, like when you have 10,000 words, when you have repetitive facts, when you have contradictory facts or connecting stop words or connecting words or stop words, this actually is hindering your content. In some cases, the sites that I have seen that are performing exceedingly well, they are very thin on content. It's not the same way as like the thin penalty that we were talking about before. Now they're able to understand intent a lot more based on just a few words. Prime example, SEO LA. If you search that word, the number 1 or 2 result is called SEOinLA.com. The site is not closed. I mean, I have checked, and it doesn't have many pages. It just has entities, and it has the entity to total word ratio is really, really high. So it's very, very specific, very targeted. And I think that's what Google wants to see because it has been tired indexing or scraping or parsing mass amount of content, millions and millions of pages that SEO will find manipulated.
So efficient content.
Efficient content, yes.
Can you share like a real life example of like when you saw like small tweaks really improving rankings?
Yeah. So in a kind of in one of the SEO agencies that I'm a part of, and I'm a partner with a few really brilliant people. We are working a lot with e-commerce pages and other clients like in various niches. But there's a specific e-commerce site that comes to mind that because of the EAV, the entity attribute value triplets that we were creating, the ability to augment a specific entity with different attributes and values and kind of like augment its appearance in the content. We saw, think about 250% increase in the growth of the actual earnings of the website in about 30 days. The caveat is that this was corroborated by other parts like offsite factors and also schema. But so once you blend them all together, you add a lot more impact for that entity that you're talking about. For example, if you're selling wallets, because this is a wallet selling site, if you add all of the attributes and all of the different signals, you come up with a very strong core that Google understands. And Google is able to rank and reward you for.
So, do you think there's possible to come up with like a single score or a formula to evaluate content? And if so, like how could SEOs take advantage of it?
Yeah, no, I think that it's imperative nowadays because there's a lot of content that's being created. There's a lot of content that people buy, and sometimes they just don't understand if it's AI created or not. So a formula or at least a methodology that allows you to understand how good it is very important. We have certain methodologies that we're working on, and I would say that some of the kind of the bits and pieces that are the important ones is how much duplication do you see in the content? How much contradiction do you see in your content? How many stop words are you using? How many entities are you using? How many connecting words are you using, or how many? There's a lot. I think when it comes to math, I think we have around like 92 different values and different analysis of how we're doing this. But there's a lot of, I guess, based on the process that you're following, there's a lot of scores that you can put in order to penalize or augment your content understanding.
So you mentioned that this score focuses just on the words, not page clutter. For those that don't know what is the difference, could you explain it and maybe tell us how to avoid the busy page?
Yeah, the busy pages. So this comes directly out of the Google League, right? And there's a lot of parts of the league. For example, if I'm not mistaken, it's called single product score. This is for e-commerce specifically. And it's not the product page score or something like that, but it is a specific score that goes lower once a page has multiple prices, multiple CTAs, and in a sense confuses the user. So there's a lot of things that we have learned out of this People League that explain how we structure our pages. And when we have a lot of fluff inside there, a lot of different contradicting elements, it actually is a bad user experience. So if you have, for example, like an e-commerce page with multiple CTAs, it's actually demoting the page. So we want to be cognizant of that when we're designing every page, even when it has a casino affiliate site, because the layout of the page plays a role. Google is rendering that page, rendering that HTML, and if it sees multiple buttons of like play now here, take that off from here, like what is the viewer supposed to do?
Right.
And this is how we should start like trying to understand the layout of the page as well, not just the content itself.
So are there any tools that can help you calculate that score?
Yeah, so we're developing one right now as a part of this agency, this Alchemist Digital agency that I'm a part of. Like we are developing solutions for that, and we have such a score. For us, this score is more about judging the content that we are creating, but we are releasing it as a micro SaaS, so it's going to be free for the community.
Oh.
And the good thing is that you're going to be able to just put your score in, and based on all of our factors, for example, the refuted score that we have, which is a very important metric, because what we're trying to do is that based on the question, the underlying question that your content is trying to answer, we have a methodology of asking surrounding questions and figuring out the other agents. Are they understanding or are they corroborating with the answer that your content gives? Or is your content hallucinating? Because that's the biggest problem with AI right now. Like it gives you an answer, but how would you know if it makes sense? The only way for us to see if it makes sense is to have other agents, because we're working a lot with agentic approaches. The other agents are asking similar questions, getting data, and then comparing. There's another agent again that's comparing the answer that your content has with everything else. And if they're in alignment, then the content is good. If there's facts that are kind of, one of them is getting wrong, there's something else. So it's refuting the answer and gives you a lower score because there might be something in there. But yeah, this is going to be hopefully public soon.
Nice. I'm waiting for that then.
Yeah.
So for now, can you give us like one metric that any SEO can start tracking tomorrow and improve content?
Yeah, assuming that you're using AI, and people, like, even if you don't, I mean, if you have me write your content, you will definitely need to be checking my stop words, especially as a person who's in this not amount of time. Like, we tend to use a lot of the also type of things, also type of connected words, the stop words that we say.
Okay, so these are the stop words.
Yeah, stop words can be a lot of different connecting words, even with punctuations or anything, but also in particular is a very difficult word. And Corey has a whole post about it, because also bridges different thematic topics. And that's very difficult for search engines. So if you go blah, 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 also blah, 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 you're actually kind of convoluting different things. You're breaking that semantic triple that we want to have, these things that search engines are able to get, and then put them into their RDF schema, which is like the way that they organize the information. So if I was to do something, is just go back to the content and just remove all the fluff and all the stop words itself. And you can do this with AI, where just like take the content, just remove stop words, make shorter sentences, or simpler content.
Okay. So you tie this to the RDF graph, Google's way of mapping facts like subjects, actions, and objects. Can you explain why does adding unique tracks, like for example, crypto projects launch date or any sort of thing like that, can help with better rankings?
Yeah. So sometimes we have ambiguous entities. For example, to say that we have the word mountain, which is the geographical place, and then we have mountain, which is like a crypto investment company.
Yeah.
So you can have different things, right? You can even motor bets and motor the composer, although they have slightly spelling variation, but there are similarities there. So let me go back to the mountain thing. But mountain, the geographical thing might have 50 attributes, and the crypto company or BlackRock or anything could have 3. It's important to start theming those entities with those different attributes. For example, the founding date of the company. A mountain, a geographical thing doesn't have a founding date, but the other one does. So when you start like playing with those attributes, you are able to kind of inject the specificity of what this entity is in Google's understanding, in a search engine, in a semantic engine understanding of what your content means. And you have to do this systemically and repeatedly for everything that you're writing. Otherwise, there's ambiguity that could cascade into multiple different facets of your content. So those things are very important to be cognizant about and keep stacking them in order to be able to have one directional content that's going to be ambiguous at all.
So how else can you grow RDF graph?
So the best way to do this is to put those evergreen entities, the evergreen attribute and values. For example, the founding date. This is something that doesn't change. The location. This is something that doesn't change. The services that you are supporting. This is what we have been doing in some lead generation sites, where we are literally saying like, company was founded there, company has address there, and it's robotic, but it's really working because it just injects things directly into Google's understanding of the knowledge graph. Other things that you can do, which is kind of not working always, but you can try to kind of point or shape different types of meaning from other entities. For example, Sylvester Stallone is an actor, but he's kind of changing his profession by just playing tennis in ATP. now you're creating this sort of association that hasn't existed before, and you are introducing more information about something that Google knows. This is important as well. But obviously, you have to do this in a corroborated manner from other signals for this to matter, and not be just a random fact. So
Surviving updates has been like really challenging in the last couple of months. Are there metrics that you would recommend for SEOs to track in order to help better go through the updates?
yeah, surviving the updates. Yeah, that's a difficult subject lately. Like obviously, like all of us have been hit one way or another post HCU. I think one of the ways to do this is semantic compression. So the same way that I said before, it's really important to be cognizant that a lot of sites have been starting to kind of like pump content. So search engines have been struggling. So the best way to kind of counteract for that is to compress your content and create a more rich content vector, which means removing the stop words, removing all the fluff, removing all the sentences that don't make sense, connective things that are ambiguous like opinions or conclusions and all those, and create a very strong content vector that for divided by the word of like entity count comparing to the total words is really, really high.
And can you give like a practical tip, especially for competitive niches? How do you pick the right words? Because sometimes, you can make a mistake. Instead of saying, for example, a hiking trail, you can say like a hiking road or something like that. But that may confuse Google, right?
Absolutely. And actually, this is really important to pick the right phrasing, not only based on its niche, but also on its country. Because there's idioms, there's specific words that are changing between different niches, different locations, different cultures. There's a lot of different language styles if you're writing for like a younger generation comparing to an older generation. So if you want to do this like systemically from a programmatic point of view, I think vocabulary APIs, Merriam-Webster I think has one, are very important to kind of try to complete the next word based on your content. But also like AI engines are very good at that. If you can tell them that this is what I'm writing, how would I change this word to make it a lot more specific, and not just use a generic, for example, for dentistry, you can't just use words like fixed teeth. There's medical terms that you should be using. If you're not using medical terms, actually you're demoting your content by a lot. There was a client that we had in Serbia that we still have, he's a dental office, and there was just one word about the vaccine, the name of the word, but that one word was the kind of like the differentiating factor of whether or not we got the feature snippet or not.
Wow.
Putting that word got definitely not change the page. Putting that word got the feature snippet. If we didn't have it, we didn't. Because you have to use the exact vocabulary, which is difficult. I'm not saying that it's easy. You have to have both knowledge of the domain, and if not, a very strong API, a very strong corpus that has all those words inbuilt, and then your content engine can make use of it.
So it's not only important from the user's experience, but search engines, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
For example, like pokies versus slots in Australia.
Pokies in Australia, like pokies, you wouldn't necessarily use it in the US or maybe in the Nordics, but you have to use it in Australia. It's a very specific term. It's a very good example of how, slots and stuff is not the same. Pork is not poker. Like you have to like. Someone who was using it without understanding, they will be confused. What are you talking about here? But that's how they call them in Australia.
Yes.
So it's massively important to match the rest of the Google understanding for that specific domain, which goes back into the entities, the whole RPF schema of Google, how it's organized, what are the values of those entities, blending it all together.
And so can you make like a small mistake in content quality, but it can cost you like huge, very costly mistake?
Yeah, I think punctuation is massive, right? Because let's eat honey. What am I referring to here? If I don't have a comma, I say let's eat honey, like the actual bee honey. But if I say let's eat comma honey, like let's say honey, or like am I doing an adjective, or is your name honey? So the way that you are typing, like that you are having a comment, especially if you let AI define it, unless the punctuation is proper, it's going to create ambiguity, especially when the AI starts this blah blah blah. This what is this referring to? Is it like the previous one? Is it from 2 paragraphs ago? So that's why, like when I see content that starts with this, is what, it's wrong. It has to be like entity and or like subject, predicate, object. So it can be very explicit and very well segmented what it is. And I know that sometimes it sounds robotic, and we were joking that a long time ago I was for submitted one of the guest posts for Ted Octopus on one of our sites. And I was when I was editing his content and I was trying to post it because I didn't know what it was. Like this is amazing that he wrote that stuff, but it's like it's such a unique way of writing because everything sounded the same. Like Ted Octopus does this, Ted Octopus does this. So but now that I know him and I know how he's operating, now it does make sense why he's trying to do this. Because he wanted to feed all those facts unambiguously and without any hesitation to search engines.
So, what's the worst thing that can happen if you actually ignore comma? As many people tend to do nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is confusion. The worst thing that can happen is content emotion and ways that your content is not going to be understood and it's not going to be properly uh, accepted by the search engines, and eventually it's going to start being demoted. You're going to be trending down, or you're going to be rewarded for different things. That's something that I find quite often from my sites, especially if I have done a mistake in the configuration. I'm seeing this from Google Search Console. I'm being rewarded for the keywords that are not exactly making sense because Google is struggling to understand what I'm trying to communicate here. There wasn't enough. I wasn't exactly clear of what I'm trying to communicate. So the queries I'm getting are not specific for the main headings and what I was trying to run for.
I see. Could you tell us actually a bit about the recovery from the core or spam updates? Could you share a step-by-step guide?
Yeah, that's a big topic, obviously, and I won't claim that I have the full answer to this. But bits and pieces from what I have tested and what I have kind of tried to do is both on page and off page. The first one would be kind of try to understand a little bit more about the agency, the automatically generated content, kind of risks that you have, and especially what the Google Lead was showing you. One thing that you can do to kind of combat that is try to increase your information gain. What I mean by that is try to create kind of newfound terms or things that haven't exactly been discussed that could kind of reclassify and reevaluate your content and make sure that you communicate to Google that you are a different piece of information. So this is, for example, if you said casining or casinoing instead of playing casino, you are creating a new different vector, a new different entity that Google might have not seen before, and therefore you might be candidate for evaluation and reclassification of your content because you are augmenting that vector. The other thing that I have seen happening quite a bit is brand mentions. Branding to me is king nowadays. So if you have enough engagement in your brand, if enough brand searches, enough brand clicks from Google, they could reclassify your website and be able to pass make the site get away from an algorithmic penalty. The other thing that you can do is a full, just underdone, a full and a total overhaul of the site, especially not necessarily the content, but the structure of the site. If you change more than 8% of the CSS, usually you're able to kind of trigger to Google that this is a new owner, and therefore I have to kind of like take you again, classify you, and it was great.
So, in crypto or iGaming, where topics evolve like very quickly, how do you decide whether to improve a low-scoring cluster or just better to delete?
Yeah. I think it's because of the trending of the impressions. There is a few tools that I would like you to pay attention to if you haven't. For example, SEO volatility from Technical Bytes is one of the things that I really like, and I don't think that people can communicate with the industry a lot. That tool keeps searching your keyword and like around like I think 10 or more times, and then it gives you an estimate of how you're trending. For example, 2 times you might be in position 2, but the rest of the times you might be in position 10. This means that Google is trending you down as more people A/B testing you down. That is actually a predictive factor of what's going to happen in the next update. You're going to lose rankings. I built it a while back in one of the tools that I had, and it was also seemingly correlated with other parts of the ranking and the impressions that I was receiving from Google in GSC.
And during the keyword research phase, do you rely heavily on LLMs to create content and topical maps, or do you prefer to do it by hand?
Yeah, I think I don't usually focus a lot on LLMs because LLMs are tricky because they are going to give you something that, first of all, you're going to think that is best, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to rank for the LLMs. That's why I built a tool named Cupid, which is only using the positions of the SERPs. So it doesn't use any semantics deliberately because I want it to be evergreen. And the machine learning network that I have underneath this neural network is able to understand how it's making an embedding the same way that LLM can make an embedding, but it makes an embedding out of the vectors themselves, out of the SERP vectors themselves, and then tries to understand those. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say is that looking at the search engines, although imperfect, is what you want to do in order to create the topical family, the topical clusters to rank for Google. If you try to classify and cluster together topics on the LLMs, they might be different than Google because Google is being bombarded, or at least is trying to understand links, user signals, offsite metrics, on-site metrics, and their perception of a topic, especially in IEMing, that there's so much manipulation, everything might be different than what LLMs are going to tell you. So you're optimizing for LLMs, trying to rank for Google, but there's this joint between the two.
So tying back to data science, how can basic ML tools like the keyword Cupid, for example, predict which content tweaks will give you like the best result?
Yeah. So the way that at least I designed it with keyword Cupid is that you understand, based on the understanding of the clusters themselves, when you have a topical family of things that are related to each other, when you analyze those keywords and then you have something like Google Search Console API and you see loss of rankings for all of the different keywords, because you can easily get the impressions that you're getting for all the keywords in a specific cluster, that could be something. If all of the things that are grouped together in such a topical clustering methodology are seemingly losing rankings or they are not getting any clicks, this is a potential candidate for pruning because they're not offering enough leverage or information or any kind of value to your site. They're actually taking away from your core value. So and in the contrary, if you see those clusters in unison getting a lot more clicks and more impressions, it makes sense to double down on that one. Maybe create some pages, maybe create more content on those nodes, and kind of approach it from a holistic point of view, where those clusters themselves are being treated as kind of like are being treated in conjunction to the impressions that you're getting, with the metric that you're getting from Search Console.
So can you leave us with final takeaway? What's like the one habit you would recommend someone practice for better rankings next year?
Sure. For content, I would say remove the fluff, the stop words, and try to make your content a lot more comprehensive and rich. And for offsite, brand. So try to figure out how you can get people to be clicking your brand, how you can maybe create citations, Google Business Profile, whatever it is that you need to do to establish brand awareness, because this is the thing that's going to protect you going forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leo,
Thanks
for
so much,
sharing so much. And if you're interested in learning more, follow Leo on LinkedIn and follow Odys and subscribe to our Odys channel on YouTube. Thank you so much. See you next
Thanks for
time.
watching.